Welcome to another session of SQL. This session is going to be a very interesting session, and I'm sure it might challenge your fundamentals about the null, understanding of null values in SQL. So here we are going to discuss again more about null. Okay, you all know about nulls, but this session is knowing more than is null and not null, and how to handling null values. Is null using is null function or other functions, but this session is more about deep understanding of null, like what is the use of null, basically why null was introduced in SQL, why it cannot be a zero or blank, and even we'll go deeper, and definitely after this session this all null related questions will be clear to you. You will be really understanding what is null in SQL. Okay, so let's start. So here you can see these are some basic questions I have asked, no more than is null not null, because whatever you learn about null is okay. You can deal with null using is null or not null. And then there are a few more questions around nulls, but then there is more. Okay, so let's start. Here I'm going to ask you questions, and line by line I am going to give the answers as well. Okay, and those answers will be practical answers, not the definition or not the theory. So let's start. Okay, so these are the questions. Okay, what is null? We all know the null as a definition, as the theoretical definition. We always read that, okay, null is not blank. Null is means missing or unknown value. And in some places people say null is not a value. So that's why you cannot compare null with the your operators like equal to, less than, or greater than, right? Because it's a state. So you cannot compare a state with these signs. Okay, arithmetic signs, signs you cannot. So it's a state. What is exactly it means? Like, what is the meaning of a state in SQL? If you know, okay, comment and give me the answer before going more or forward in this video. If you know the answer, just comment. And what is blank? Blank, we know blank represent known value. It means value not present. Okay, it means it's empty value, but we know that it's empty value, so it's not unknown, it's known. And blank is always a string type. So like all the data type which are string type, varchar and varchar or text, they will accept blank string. Okay, this is theory. There we know this, and I'm going to give the answer of like these: why null not blank, and how much space. This is an important question. How much space a column with null values takes in disk? This is very important question. So we'll understand this with example. Okay, if you know the answer, comment it before going further in this video. And then there is a very deep fundamental question: null bitmap. If you heard this term null bitmap ever, okay, if you have not heard, this is going to clear everything about the null today in SQL. It's very fundamental, but 90% people don't know about the null bitmap, or 95% people don't know about null bitmap, even never heard of this term null bitmap. What the hell this is? Okay, so let's understand what you know first. Okay, so in my adventure work schema database, we have tables. So under person schema, we have a table person. So let's take this table as an example. This is a table where we have employee information about the Microsoft. Okay, AdventureWorks company employees information, and this is the table structure. You can see we will be focusing on the columns which are string type, like title, first name, middle name, last name. So let's have our discussion around these three columns. Okay, first name, middle name, last name here, and you can see that we can see nulls around the middle name. Even in some cases people have just one name, not the last name, maybe first name only, so that is considered as a last name. So it is not like mandatory to always have a last name or first name. So But with this database, I can see there are nulls in the middle column, okay, middle name column. So it's okay. You can see this is a structure of table. There are a lot of columns, but we will be focusing on these 3 columns. Now, what you know about null is you cannot compare middle name equal to null, right? Because null is not a value. Okay, so null is any stage. So how you can deal with, you can say that, okay, where the middle name is null, this query will select all the persons, all the employees where the middle name is null. If you want like otherwise that, okay, all the people where the middle name is not null, then this is the query. Okay, the same query will go for the integer columns as well. Here I've, for example, I am just showing you the string column. I'm not going deep on like what you know or what all the people know. All the people know how to use is null or is not null. It's very simple. Okay, and then where we have seen example where we are using null columns in the aggregate, mostly like count and average. Okay, so here let's say I am counting all the rows of this table where middle name, I mean, I'm not taking care it's null or not null, so let's just count it. And you see when we count it, the total is, okay, 11,473 rows, okay, with the count on the middle name. But when I did this, like use is null function, so now this count is 19,000. It means more. So it means in the middle name there are a lot of column rows value which are null, and while aggregating using aggregate functions, aggregate function doesn't consider nulls here. Okay, so this will not give you the exact view of rows in the table. It will give wrong data, right? So to deal with such situation, we have is null function, we have coalesce function. You all know, right? Coalesce as well, we'll discuss. So is, if you say is null, we will pass first, which is column name, and then the second, okay, what is the alternate value? So if it is not present, we can say NA. When you run this, it will give you all the rows, because wherever it will find null, it will replace with this value. Correct? That's correct. Okay, so that's why there are more values. Now just focus on these 3 columns: is first, last name, first name, middle name, last name, and how these two functions work. Is null or coalesce. Is null is like while replacing the null values with some alternate values, which basically takes only 2 parameters. Okay, but it is very good to use is null when you know that there are only 2 parameters, because the performance wise it's good than the coalesce, which is the old function. And in coalesce you can pass multiple parameters, which, like what I'm saying, when the middle name is null, replace it with the first name. If the first name is null, or you can say last name, which will be better, first name, so last name will come 2 times. Okay, and middle name, if null, replace with last name. If last name is also null, then replace with NA. This will also work. Okay, so far, and then there can be few more examples. This is what you all know. 99% or 95% people, this is all you know about null. And here we end our null discussion. Right, now more about this session. Okay, what more? So let's tackle this question first. Why null, not blank? So for this, the answer is very simple, that null means unknown. But this unknown can be an integer, it can be float, or it can be a string, or anything else. Okay, so it means once when we create a table, when we define the structure of table, schema of table, when we define the column and data type, and then we define that it's a nullable column or it's not null column, right? So when we say null, right, we don't care about the data type of that column, right? If it is not a primary key and clustered index, then you can always have it as like null, irrespective of data type. So then if you are saying blank, right, so blank is always applicable only for the strings, not for the integer. If you try to insert and blank as an string in the integer column, you will get error, because the data type mismatch error, right? So same way, if you assign 1 or 0, so 1 and 0 are the real number, right? No, 0 comes under whole number, but it's a number, right? So 0 makes sense. Like, okay, how I am a customer, I placed an order with a 0 amount, right? But this 0 is an amount. It is not like, it's not null. It's 0 is amount. I mean, so let's say I purchased something for the value of $10. I have a coupon of $10. So I applied that coupon. I paid the value as a total as a 0 because I applied a coupon of $10, right? So this 0 is a real number. It's not like null. So you cannot have 0 as a replacement of null. You cannot have blank as a replacement of null, because blank is a real string. Blank is a string. Okay. So, and we want, like in SQL, while designing the SQL as a fundamental, so there was a need of a universal, you can say a data type which can hold the value of every data type as an unknown. So that's why the null was introduced. So that's why null is needed, not the blank. Okay, so this as a null string is different than null. Okay, and if you say null as a string, then it is a string as a null. Okay, so very careful while importing the data from Excel, because in some time if you type null 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 in every cell and then you copy paste the data in command prompt in some other video, I've given example how to quickly import the data from Excel even without importing, just using select and union query, right? But if there are null null null, and if you consider those null as an string in your SQL, those will be inserted as a string. Then they are not null value. So this is not null. Okay. Okay. Now, few more tricky things about null. So same query, person where middle name is null. If you try to concatenate just by plus, just see what is the output. Any guess? Just see. They all are null. So it means you cannot perform your arithmetic operations like plus, minus, or whatever on the null column. So if any column out of all these columns is null, then you will be getting all the values as null. Okay, so when you are going to add first name with an unknown and then last name with an unknown, you are going to get always null. So that's why when you are dealing with null columns, be very careful. So if you are still want to concatenate these columns, you cannot use just simple plus. You should replace this concatenate, right? Use this function. This is like, these are all example which you might know. Okay, another example, if you, so this was with string plus null, because here I have filter where middle name is null, so it's all null, right? Add another example, we are like 10 plus null, output null. Why null? Because yeah, again adding an 10 with an unknown, it's null. So very careful while using null. Now you have answer for why null, and you know that, okay, what you know so far. Here I will go back to this example where when we counted the middle name and then we counted is null middle name, and we have seen 11,000 versus 19,000. Now let's another query. This is very interesting, right? When I say 6, okay, what will be the output? Let's see the output. It's again 19,972. What is 6 actually, right? Just go here, select this table. What is 6? 6 is count, like we can count index by, I mean column by index. So it is not always mandatory to give column name while selecting the query, right? If you don't know, I mean we can select by index of column as well. It means, what it means, if I say select not asterisk, I select 1 from this table, you can see, you will be seeing, okay, sorry, not like this, yeah, or ignore for this part, we are diverting from our okay, sorry. So let's go here. So let's say count this person. Okay, so when we say 6 count, right, so what it does actually, it gives a fixed value as a 6 for all the rows, and then it count as a 1 for every row as a 1, then it gives you all the value, right? So it's always better to count like 1. It will always give you the complete value. Okay, it will ignore the nulls because it will consider one row as a 1 and then constant value and then add up all. So better giving the column name, you can always give the 1 or index. Okay, let's come back to our questions again. So definition we know, and why null, not blank. This is also we know now. Now, this is a very important question, an interview question. It's like people like us or me, we should understand this. Okay, so let's say while defining a table, okay, you have a lot of columns, and let's say you have given varchar 500, 500, varchar 500 for multiple columns, but you are storing mostly null values in those columns for each row. Okay, once in a while you are getting a value, but always null, right? So actually, for those all null values, how much data it takes, like in the disk, like that table takes in the disk. So like when you say 500 and you are keeping it null, so will it take the 500 byte, or it will take some other value? Right? That's a very important question. So let's understand this practically. Okay, so I have another table under the person schema itself. I will take this table for an example. Okay, so why? Because this table is address table, and in this address table we have columns like address line and line 2 and city, these columns as an string. Okay, these columns and a string. So this is our original table having a 19,614 record in this table. Okay, 19,614. This is again for address of all the persons, and we are going to create a replica of same table, and we will allow null for all these line 1, line 2, and city everywhere, wherever is only we are talking about the character and varchar column. So let's create this replica of table with say address as a null. Okay, I created a table, same structure, same column as we have this table with the name as a null. Now I'm going to insert all the rows of this table, I mean this original table, in this newly created table, but for all the column where I have kept like a string, like line 1, line 2, city, and the postal code, I will insert null. Okay, so this query, I have written a select query, so I will insert by, so you can see this is null, null, null. So I'm inserting these 4 column as a null. So let's insert in this table, insert it again. So how many rows I inserted? Again, same 19,614. So 19,614 inserted. Now, if you select from this newly created table, although we not always need to write queries like this for row count, but for now it's fine. So you can see it's null, 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 and all 19,000. You can see right bottom 19,614, same number of rows. Now, how much space these two tables are taking, right, in the disk, that we need to understand, right? So this is our first table, person address original table, and this is an system store procedure. In some other session we'll cover system is important system stored procedure. There are a lot, but there are many in which you need to know, and such one is sp space used. It's very useful. You can see it instantly for a table. We can know how many rows it has and how much data it has, how much data is reserved, what is the index data it is using. But here we are mostly worried about the number of rows and then the data. So you see for the original table, the number of rows we have is 19,614, and the data, the real data in the disk is 2768. 2768. Okay, correct. Now this table, the newly created table. Now just see the data. Again, the rows are same, but the data is less. Let's run this together. Okay, so now you can see for the first original table, we have same number of rows, but the data in the disk is around 2.7 MB, right? But here the data is 1.7 MB when we stored null, 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 right? Now you see the magic. So it means when we store null for those columns, the varchar columns or nvarchar columns, so it doesn't take whole space. Okay, so how much space actually it takes? It's that's interesting. So for a null column, whenever it finds a null, uh, um, so if this column is null, so for this row, for this column, it's going to take only 1 bit. How much? 1 bit. And you know what is 1 bit. So when we keep 8 bit, then we get 1 byte. So for all, so we are keeping here 4 column, 1 2 3 4. So together all these 4 column will take 4 bit only, even not 1 byte, right? Although when we define this table, we know that this column is 60 byte column, right? This 60, and it's like when we say n varchar, it takes double space. So basically it's 120 byte, right? So we are assigning 120 byte, 120 byte, 120, it's like 60 byte, and here it's 30 byte, right? But how much space originally it is taking in the table while storing the null value is just 1 bit, okay? How from like where it is stored 1 bit, that's the now the magic, okay? So now we are coming really deep here. So what happens, in my first or second video in this channel, I have described you like how the data is being really stored in the database, okay? And there I explained like all the data is being stored in the pages, in the form of pages. So all the rows in a table that we call data row is being stored in the form of pages, and every page is around 3 kilobyte that I explained that day and in detail, right? So that's another session, but here every row is being stored in a page, okay? So when the row is stored in a page, it's in a memory, so there is a metadata as well. That day I explained that there is a metadata which takes care of like additional overhead, like having address on other information, okay? So for a table, with every row there is a metadata which we say row data or row metadata, okay? So like in this table you have 19,600 rows, and then you for every row there is a metadata for that row, and that row metadata have a structure, right, that tracks all the null values in that particular row, and that structure is called null bitmap. This is null bitmap. It's very important, right? So with the row metadata, it's theoretical, but now you have seen the practical, right? So with a row, for each row there is a row metadata, and in row metadata there is a structure which is called null bitmap. This null bitmap keeps the information of every column where is there a null or not null, okay, in the form of bit. So as this table is having 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 column, this every row metadata will have a null bitmap with 9 bit, okay? So 9 bit cannot go in computer, right? It will always go in the form of byte, so it means it's more than 1 byte, so it's like 2 byte. So with every row 2 byte are going for null bitmap, and in this null bitmap you understand it, right? So now you have now 9 column, so 1 to 9 you have 1 bit assigned, and for every bit you can have only 2 values, 1 or 0, right? So when a column uh, 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 when a column value is null, so if the for a row of one particular column value is null, then null bitmap will track it as a 1, and if this it is not null, then null bitmap will have 0 as a stage, okay? Now you understand that for every column 1 bit is being added in the metadata. So there are 9 columns, so 9 bit are added in the metadata, not 9, so it's basically 2 byte, but you understand 9 bit are added in the metadata, and for each column where it finds null, it will keep it as null bitmap value 1, and for not null it will keep at 0. So as you know that 1 and 0 are the state, on and off, they are not actually the value, right? So null means not the value, null means a state. What is the state? It's a state like in null bitmap, that state is 1, which is on, and if it is a not null, then that state is 0 in the null bitmap, and null bitmap is inside row metadata. It's a very important basic fundamentals of SQL to understand the nulls. So this is the whole definition. if you want to go further, okay, how to read this, really you can see row metadata or the bitmap, then you should read more about DBCC and DBCC IND, DBCC page and DBCC trace, which is a broad topic, but you need not to even go that further in the detail, I will say. But if you understand that for each row there is a row metadata, inside row metadata you have null bitmap. For each row, each column in null bitmap, there is one bit assigned. So basically one null column value takes just one bit, not even the byte. It's 1 by 8 of 1 byte. So if there are 8 columns with null values, then they take 1 byte. 8 column, 1 bit each, then they take 8 bit, 1 byte. So I think now you know more about null, right? You now know what is null bitmap. Now you know what is the state means. State, what is the state? If someone is asking in an interview that, okay, you say null is not a value, null is an state, so then what is that state mean? Now you know what is the state, right? The state is in the null bitmap, the state 1 is indicate null as an on and 0 as an off, which is not null. Okay, so I hope that you enjoyed this session. You should understand the basics of pages. You can go, I will give the link of my first or second video where I describe a little bit about the pages, but this was all about null, knowing more than is null and not is null, and very careful while handling null values in the database. Okay, so if you find this session useful, knowledgeable, if like it was helpful for you in learning the basic fundamentals, tricky fundamentals and tricky interview questions about SQL, because this is very tricky. When if I'm interviewer, I will ask you, okay, what is null? You will say, no, null is not a value. So that's why null cannot be equal to null, because it's a state. So you don't know unknown state, so you cannot compare it with anything, right? So okay, so it's a state, but as I ask you, what is state? State actually mean, then you don't have answer until you understand this null bitmap. Okay, so if you like the this discussion and this session, please like this video, subscribe, refer to your other friends, and try and like pause it, understand it, and do practically. Okay, what I have done here, do practically, use these two, and then you see that really how the data size shrinks, right? So for the null column, it doesn't take the whole data. I'm not counting the exact data because I know it will always take in the byte. So if there are more than 8 column, it will be always 2 byte. If it is more than 16 column, it will be 3 byte. Right? But it's just a bit for a column. So if we are the quotient is 1 column only, then it is a bit, not even the byte. Okay, but you can see the data difference here. It's like with this small table with just 3 column difference is just 1 MB, and when you will be dealing like millions rows, and then it will be like in hundreds of MBs in the space size, the difference in the disk. Okay, so thank you for watching. Please like the video. We'll see you in other video. Okay.